Now we're letting the machine cut the laminates for the form, and I'll be cutting, I think there's 12 that are in this sheet, and I've got 2 more sheets to go after that. Okay, I used a chisel and a hand reamer and some sandpaper to get these all cleaned up nice. Now I'm just going to use a little Titebond original and glue them all together. Okay, I've got 26 layers glued up. Should be about 13 inches. Okay, this is how the bending form turned out. You know, you saw me glue up all the laminates, and after they were glued up, I used a plane to, fair this and make sure it's perfectly flat, and sanded it to make sure it was nice and round and smooth. Then I made a capture device. It's just a piece of wood, piece of poplar here that's got a notch in it that I can fit the laminates in to help me control this when I'm trying to get it into the bag and bent, and I'll show you that in a minute. And then I went ahead and taped all over the top here and the sides with clear packing tape so that the glue wouldn't stick to the form. I made some guidelines for the center and 10-inch wide, which is pretty much my nominal size. I can get 4 sides for a total of 2 boxes by using a 10-inch piece. Then I took some of my plastic mesh, stapled it onto the bottom, and ran it around here so that I get good vacuum all the way around. I'm going to have enough problems just trying to control this while I'm drawing the vacuum. I didn't want to have any problem with the nipple, freezing up and not pulling vacuum. So we got good flow all around. Now the way this works, I've made up a packet of 4 pieces of the 16th inch veneer. They're cut to 10 3/4 long by 10 wide. And the idea is that you take this piece of 1/8 plywood, which is very thin, and you line these up well, stick them here in the capture device, and then put your, this is just really a caul to help this spread the force evenly. It's a tight fit, but it'll fit. And the idea now is that I can wrap this up, work it into my bag. Of course, I don't have any glue on this right now, just while I'm showing you how this works. I work it on into the bag, and this will fit down underneath a little strong back that I made that has a lip on it. But this will fall right into there. And the idea there is that now I don't have to have 5 hands making this work. Once I seal up the back, I can just concentrate on pushing this down with the pressure, and I don't have to worry about this sliding all over the place. So let's get the closure device, seal up the bag. There we go. I've got a board here to help if I need to even out the pressure as I push this down. Because what's going to happen is that if I don't push this down by hand, the vacuum's going to pull the bag in underneath the piece between the work and the form. And that's not going to work very well. So I need to have it where I can push that down. Okay, then I'll take my vacuum hose, go ahead and attach it, turn on my vacuum. push this down manually as far as I can. So let the vacuum draw. If I push it down hard enough, I won't get into the bag underneath the work. So now I've got 27 inches of vacuum, which is pretty good. And next we'll try to put some glue in here and see if this pressure is good enough to give us a real even bond. Well, the glue is set overnight. I used Unibond 800. It's very stiff glue, good for laminates. And so let's go ahead and see what it looks like. Like we've got a pretty tight curve. There's a slight bit of spring back. I allowed a 1/16 spring back when I made the form. Made the form a little bit tighter curve than I needed, and it looks like maybe that's all I got, 1/16 or so. So this a little hard for you to see, I guess. The spring back was very minor. And it looks like so far like I got a good lamination. Now I'm going to use the edge sander to get one edge nice and true so that I can later on saw. Now I'm going to cut these to width on the bandsaw. I was thinking of using the table saw, but I'd have to get my fingers in awful close to the blade, and I'd be having to roll this as I went through. And I just didn't feel like making that production method. If this works out well, I can do this over and over again and be much safer. Now, I'm cutting to 2 1/4. The finished piece is supposed to be 2 7/32, so I'm cutting a little bit wide, and that way I can use a plane to bring this right down to the exact width. After I make the cut, I'll go ahead and reflatten the edge. Also, I put some tape on the bottom here to prevent any splintering. Now you can see these starting to take shape. I still got to trim the ends here, but you can kind of get the idea of what the wave box looks like. And I ended up not planing that edge. I ended up using the belt sander again because after struggling for a while figuring out how to clamp this thing and then plane it, I thought, why not just do both top and bottom edges the same way, and just like that it was done. Now getting this cut right is very critical, so I've made a jig where I can cut both the flat side and the tight curved side. The jig holds the piece where I want it, and I've gone ahead and made a line on my work just to double check that I get in the right place. I want it right on the edge of my cut line. So this should make it easy to replicate this cut over and over again. before putting the sides together on the box, I want to be able to clean up any roughness, a little glue or whatever from the insides. So I'm going to use my oscillating spindle sander with a big drum on it. Got a big heavy vacuum hooked up to this to collect dust, and this ought to do a good job. Now I've adjusted the width of each of these sides to 2 7/32 inches, and I've gone ahead and sanded the inside that you saw, and I went ahead and put tape on each of these because the next thing I'm going to do is cut the fingers. I don't want to tear out. Now I've got a special jig I've made here. See if I can get you to see. It's got a curved surface on which the work can fit. And down in here, there's a little index tooth. I know you can't see it, but it's there. And it's separated from the saw kerf by the exact thickness of one tooth. So the idea is, I'll put my work down in here and butt it up against the tooth, run it through the saw. The saw is just high enough to give me a kerf that is a little over the thickness of one of these sides. And once that's done, I'll just index over to the next to the kerf I just cut, etc., 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 until I'm all the way through. And the width of this is designed so that on one side you have tooth, kerf, tooth, kerf, tooth, kerf. When you flip it over 180, you also get tooth, kerf, but the tooth is on the opposite end, so that two of these things will actually be able to fit together. Once it's all set up, I can fit these together, and the sides will be coplanar. One thing, I put a guard on here. Whenever you're working with these jigs, try to figure out some way to make a guard so your finger can't fall into the saw. I put this guard piece on here so that while I'm holding this wood, if my finger slipped, it won't slip into the blade, it'll hit the guard. So I just think that's very important to do. Okay, so you can see I've got tooth, kerf, tooth, kerf, tooth, kerf, and the last place is a kerf. Now I'm going to go ahead and turn this around, and now I've got to hold it vertically. It's not too hard to do. Hold it vertically and do the same routine. And there we go. That's one. Now, let's see. There's 72 boxes. Each box has two sides. Each side has two of these, so that's 144, 288. I only have 288 of these to do. At this time, before chasing all the finger joints with a file, I've put on 2 coats of 1 pound cut shellac with a sanding of 400 grit between coats. And that's because it's a good time to do the inside sanding, or the inside finishing, because obviously I can't get that done when the box is together. Also, it strengthens up the wood behind these finger joints so that when I do chase them with a file, I'll get less chip out. Now, once the fingers are cut with the saw, I'm going to just chase them with a 1/8 inch file. So I've got a little backup board here. I can put my work in the tail vise and then just chase them. Okay, clean off any little splinters that may have formed. And let's see how they fit. There you go. You can get a pretty good fit that way. And when we clamp this later and glue it, it'll bring the joints up even closer. Okay, here I have 73 sides put together, and I spent some time trying to match the grain on these sides. I'll give you an example. Here's some cherry that is flat sawn as opposed to quarter sawn, and there's a real difference in the look. So I had to make sure both sides of the same box were similar. Another example, here's some very light walnut next to some very dark walnut. So I matched the grain patterns, and then I assembled the boxes, and from this, it's just dry assembled. From this point on, I have to keep these sides together. So the next step is going to be to make the faces coplanar, and then we'll cut the groove for the tops to fit in, but I got to keep these sides together.